Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another bite-sized training session. And today we're going to talk about using widgets within a database-driven grid using the Profound UI product. But before we jump in, let's just have a quick chat about the bite-sized training sessions. For those of you who have not attended before, it's something we really encourage people to join in with. It's a free 30-minute training session that we offer once every month, and we really welcome your thoughts on particular aspects of the product portfolio that we have. So if you have any ideas, please send in your hit list of things that you want us to cover, and we'll create a bite-sized training session around those. So all I can try and do is encourage you to engage, and we'll do the rest for you. Okay, so let's just have a quick talk about using the Profound UI suite of programs, and let's start off by saying, well, why would we use Profound UI on an IBM I? And Profound UI gives us the ability to create rich modern look and feel type transactions that run in a browser using an RPG program. So we've got the ability to deploy our interactive screen sessions now in a browser using RPG. Gives us a nice web-based feeling, but it also gives us the ability to provide accessibility from not just internally within a LAN, but using a wider area network. So remote access becomes much easier now, and it doesn't rely on any installed packages like the ACS or Client Access 400 or a Telnet session. Upgrades are done at server level, so as long as the client has got a browser, they can get access to the system. We can now integrate with other web applications that are running outside of our sort of control, typically things like Google Maps and the postcode lookup, those type of transactions. So we can build those alongside our existing homegrown applications. Another big factor is that it speeds up development time, and that's one of the things we're going to focus on today. At least by 30%, possibly more in a lot of cases, and I'll show you why that's true as we go through the presentation. So we're going to talk about using database-driven widgets within the Profound UI product, and this gives us the ability to a widget is a component that's like a component within the framework itself. So when you're designing the screen, you will use, say, a grid widget, which equates to a subfile in our traditional RPG programming. But things like drop-down lists, combo boxes, input fields, we can attach a database to those widgets, and then we can select from that database the columns or the fields that we want presented into those widgets. And there's absolutely no coding required in this. The widget itself then takes the data from the database that we've defined and using any selection criteria that we use. And it automatically builds that grid, that widget for you on the actual browser canvas. So typically, using in this case, a grid database-driven widget, we can select in the designer the different styles, and you can customize the styles yourself. This is using a sort of, the one that you can see on the screen is a simple grid, and it's the others you see, crystal, contemporary, ice blue, and so on, are variations on the theme. They all have the same properties. It's just the look and feel, different style sheeting, and so on. So typically we would load the grid onto our canvas during the design, and then we'd attach the database to that, and then the grid will automatically pull the information from that and display it on the screen itself, as you can see from there. But with the new version of the product, we have this ability now to load fields onto that grid, so we can actually create other widgets within the grid widget, and then we can customize the look and feel. Because if I go back to the previous screen, pretty much what you see on the screen is that the styling is controlled by the style sheet itself. We can't now customize that. So although that's a fantastic feature from a point of view that we can generate this code and this functionality within the browser, there's not an awful lot we can do within formatting individual column fields. It's all done at the global grid level, whereas this facility now gives us the ability to pull into the cells within the grid input fields or an output field or an image chart, and the formatting of that particular individual field is now controlled by the input widget itself or the output widget and so on. And we can also change the database driven chart element of that by putting in a custom SQL. So instead of naming the table and then selecting the columns from that table, we can put in our own custom built selection criteria within an SQL statement. And we can pull in all sorts of other fields. So in this particular example, what I've done is, first of all, I've loaded the grid widget onto the canvas. Then I've added some individual fields so that I can define the characteristics. And you can see that the priced field is, I've put that in a red color, and I've used different fonts for the others. So I've now customized those individually. But actually what I've also done is I've created, as part of the SQL statement, a string that's been substringed from another column. So in this case, I've actually concatenated the wording, which is a path name, profound UI, user data, so on. Then the field name, PIMG, which is coming from the table, with a .gif on the end. So I've actually built up a string which I can now attach to an image source, and I put an image widget onto the canvas itself. So that now populates the canvas automatically, and I can get a picture that pops up onto the grid itself. And I'll take you through this so it makes more sense in a little while. So this is now, instead of that sort of bland-looking table, which is with blue coloration, we now have the ability to control the actual size of the grid, and we can use percentages of, to represent the width and the height and its position on the screen, which now means we can use this more in tune with the way a mobile app works. So whenever you change the size of the actual canvas itself, the grid widget shrinks or grows to fill the space. And I also included an image in this particular example by building up part of an SQL string with some fixed text and so on. And you can see on the right-hand side that the screen's been sort of shrunk to mimic a tablet or a mobile phone in landscape, and it automatically resizes this for us. And I've actually not written a line of code for this. This is all I've done within the RPG program is output the screen, and PUI then takes over and says, as part of building the screen, I need to follow the rules, whatever, however I've set those in the actual canvas itself, and we get this fantastic looking display coming out. That's the actual RPG program. So I've not even had to define the file that it's reading the data from. The only file that's described in my program is the actual screen file that I'm outputting, and I've told it that it needs to use the profound UI handler. And then I've got effectively a loop that's going around displaying the screen until I press the exit button. So let me just go on to the session itself. And here is the actual design of the screen. I've got two screens. The first one is a traditional grid component, which is, if we go down to our subbar grids here and expand that down, you can see a list of all the pre-defined ones. We can customize these, as I said before. You just drag that onto the canvas itself, and then within here, you can see that I've specified a database file. And then from the database file, I click on the icon here and it gives me the ability to select the fields. And having done that, it then builds me a grid based on the fields that I've selected. So I've got PRID and so on, PName. These are all the columns from that field. And when the screen is output, that's automatically built for me. So using the same principle, we've now got a customized version, and in here I've clicked on this property, load fields into widgets. So now I've now loaded with a widget into the grid itself and bound the name of that widget to a program variable. So if I look at the you'll see here this particular output field that I've created, I've bound it to a value P price, and P price is the same name as the column that's retrieved from the database itself. And in here, I'll put an image source, an image component on there, and I've bound the image source property to a field called PIMG. I'll go back to my grid itself and look at the SQL component. What I've basically now done is done a select statement using the PRID, the PName, P price, and then I've concatenated some fixed text with the PIMG column that's coming from the SQL, and that's the name of the table. So that now automatically builds this on the fly, and when I launch this, you'll see the first screen I output is the standard old style widget grid component. Press the enter, it will now display the new style that I've created with the field bindings to the actual output fields. And if I just move this out of the way so I can bring that. So now whenever I resize the actual canvas, it automatically rebuilds this for me. And if I make that a landscape mode and so on, you can see that it sort of, if I ran this on a tablet, depending on the size of the tablet and so on, I can it will fill the space accordingly. So this is really, an advance now on the function that we already had that gave us the facility for building database-driven components. We can now take control of the look and feel within that component and take it to another dimension. And in this case, not a line of code has been written. So that comes to the end of the bite-sized training session today.